3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nick.
And this is Yuri, and you're watching Moontower HQ.
This week, after nearly a $2,000 dump, we're going to be talking about what are the best ways that we know to buy Bitcoin and some of the tips that we have come into when it comes to Bitcoin, storing Bitcoin securely. And a quick overview for everybody watching who doesn't want to go through the whole thing. It really depends on your individual risk tolerance. So stay tuned if you want to hear more. Launching into it, I think that for me personally, there are several ways which I prefer to buy Bitcoin with, but there are definitely many others that exist which are viable depending on your incentives, your, as mentioned, risk tolerance, and other factors as well. So cutting it right from the top, I think one of the ones that people think about predominantly when it comes to how to buy Bitcoin is an exchange. In this case, a centralized exchange, which means that they hold user funds and then they have an order book where users can place, buy or sell orders and then execute at a particular price. This has certain advantages in terms of requiring not too much effort to set up, but still much more than if you were to go, for example, with something like local Bitcoins, which you are buying Bitcoins individually from another person. Going back to the exchange topic, the other issue with exchanges is that you do also have to have some type of KYC AML for most of them that are out there. There are numbers that exist without those requirements, but they are becoming fewer and far between. Similarly to P2P transactions of Bitcoin with regards to local Bitcoins is also instigating a KYC policy as of late. Back before that was in place, you could just meet other individuals at a coffee shop and exchange Bitcoin that way. One of the other ways that I know to purchase Bitcoin is through a Bitcoin ATM. This is pseudo P2P in a sense that you are not negotiating with a centralized platform for a price, but you are simply going to a kiosk that already holds a certain amount of Bitcoin under their control that distributes this directly to your wallet in exchange for cash. There are also institutional level ways of entering and buying Bitcoin, in particular that is brokers. And they are some of the channels in which users can buy large amounts of Bitcoin without affecting the price, which is one of their benefits. The drawbacks perhaps to brokers is that it is more difficult to find them, qualify them, and get in contact with them in order to be able to provide these types of services to them. Yuri, are there any other means that you know that exist out there that I might have missed?
Well, I think you covered pretty much all the basics for buying Bitcoin out there. There are some interesting developments. For example, there are decentralized exchanges such as BISC. What BISC is essentially an application that is serverless. It means it has no central server. So you download an application and you run your own node, and that application has an order book of different orders for buy and for sell, and in different currencies. So you can essentially buy Bitcoin in a peer-to-peer fashion for using different methods of payment, such as SEPA or SWIFT, and sometimes even cash payments. This is a very interesting development because it removes a intermediary from the deal, not only on the technical level, but also on the legal level, because there's absolutely no company in between. For example, other peer-to-peer exchanges like HODL or local Bitcoins, they provide similar service, but they are still in the middle as a service provider. However, with local Bitcoins, you would have to pass KYC. They do KYC on absolutely everyone, and you would have to deposit Bitcoins in a trust that is run by local Bitcoins. So it's not a completely trustless solution either. But with HODL, it's a more or less it's a trust minimized solution because you deposit Bitcoin into a multi-signature escrow wallet, which is a different thing. In this way, neither the buyer nor the seller can actually run away with Bitcoin. So the deal is much safer that way. However, yes, there is still the company that runs HODL in the middle, kind of providing you the technical solution. It's more of a SaaS system, software as a service. So, and some of the other innovations out there include peer-to-peer exchanges that are built into the wallets themselves. For example, Blue Wallet, which is gaining traction both on mobile and even desktop right now for on-chain and Lightning wallets, has integrated peer-to-peer trading in their wallet. So the local trader functionality allows you to find people who are nearby and trading Bitcoin, either for cash or for bank transfer, and you can also do it. Interestingly enough, Blue Wallet actually used HODL's technology. They used their API to build their solution, but regardless of that, they still provide it in such a way that the deals are done peer-to-peer, and the Blue Wallet is not really in the middle. I think they are in the middle only for when it comes to dispute resolution, when when the buyer and the seller cannot agree on a certain situation. So then the Blue Wallet team will come in and act as an arbiter. Other than that, yes, among the traditional ways of buying, there are various solutions for dollar cost averaging, but I think we can essentially think of them as just brokers like all the other brokers. They are not institutional, they're retail brokers, but they're still brokers because they just act as a link between you and liquidity providers, and you use them for smaller purchases. Those are the current ones that I know about.
Actually, if I may interrupt real quickly, what are your thoughts on the, for example, friction points involved in decentralized exchanges, as well as those peer-to-peer versions and the wallet exchanges, I guess you could call them. I don't really know what the technical term for that would be, but any friction points you feel that are there?
Well, I think the least friction, this is why Blue Wallet, for example, did it, because they want to provide the least friction for their users, because you already have a wallet in your hand. So why not just add a new button in your wallet in which you can buy Bitcoin? And some wallets already did that, but what they did is they integrated with a third-party service provider, like a service provider, for example, that with which you can buy using credit cards or debit cards. But Blue Wallet went the other way. They decided to integrate HODL's technology, which allows you to create a peer-to-peer market within the wallet itself. I think it's a pretty frictionless procedure because you have the wallet. Within that wallet, you can find someone to buy Bitcoins from or someone to sell Bitcoins to. As for when we talk about exchanges and brokerages, obviously there's friction because the first step to transacting on such platforms is always KYC AML. So you cannot go around it because these businesses are in business because of these regulations and guidelines that they have to follow. So there is friction there. And of course, sometimes the banking system itself causes quite a bit of friction, as you know, some wire transfers can be delayed, and instead of processing within 24 hours, they can take 5 days, for example. That is a friction too. I think the most frictionless way would be to buy Bitcoin with cash using a peer-to-peer exchange like the one built into the Blue Wallet. But again, not everybody, as you mentioned, has these high risk tolerance, because cash transactions are cash transactions. And in the first world country, you may be safe doing so, and not always either. Whereas in a third world country, you probably don't want to do it unless you are sure that you will be secure during that situation. So yeah, those are the points of friction there. And then, of course, when people buy their Bitcoins, they have to figure out how to store their Bitcoins. And there are multiple ways of storing bitcoins. What do you think is the best way to store bitcoins at this point? We're in 2020 already, and I'm sure there has been some development in the storage domain of the Bitcoin industry. What are your quick tips for that?
Yeah, definitely. For me personally, I at first started off using mobile wallets, light wallets as they are called, which don't have the full transactional log on it. For simply put, the entire blockchain downloaded with them. They're hosted on a separate server and then verified through certain centralized communications to the wallet. And I used that maybe for the first 4 years, I would say, of my participation in the space, which is quite a long time. But what it allowed me to do is very quickly set up an account and get moving with multiple different types of wallets that could be out there for me, with different user interfaces, with different additions in terms of being able to purchase Bitcoin from third-party providers and the such. But eventually I started to realize that there was a very large security flaw in that model. Not only was it centralized in one location, that being my phone, which, as we know, already has a lot of backdoors in it, both that are intentional and unintentional. But this compromises the safety of the funds long term. If you have a smaller amount in there, you know that you are more or less willing to lose. Nobody, of course, ever wants to lose it, but you might feel okay with the risks of having a mobile light wallet. The next stage for me actually was a full node, more or less, on my computer. This Bitcoin QT, essentially, which is the dominant wallet that is hosted on the Windows desktop, for example, and other types of OSs as well. There, the principle for me personally was to try to take control of not only my holdings, but also my ability to transact without having to come into issues of delays for waiting for other servers. Because one of the other things with light wallets is that in order to send money in and out, again, it's going through uh, a node that is not very close to you. So the processing times would take a little bit longer, confirmation times in this particular case, and other aspects. While as hosting your own node and running a native wallet, you are able to essentially be the first in line to provide those transactions up for mining to the blockchain or for verification. So this method for me was great in the, I would say, um, security side of my desires for storing Bitcoin, but it failed in the usability, because if the internet were to go down, if I was traveling, I would have to constantly re-download or add to the existing version of the blockchain, update it, so to speak, catch it up with the entirety of the network before I could transact. And also the interface itself is, let's just say it leaves a lot to be desired. So from a usability perspective, I found myself using it honestly less and less. And that's when I came into the transition of hardware wallets. Hardware wallets are essentially third-party devices that allow you to store and secure your Bitcoin primarily and predominantly in a more or less physical form. Kind of give you guys an example of what one looks like. Here is a Trezor, which is a very good brand, in my opinion, in order to do this types of storage. Here, the advantages for me was actually not only just in, of course, having physical control over my Bitcoin in terms of the transactional capabilities, but primarily in how transactions are signed or how the wallet is created. So this is, I guess I would say, my first and big tip that I suggest to anybody who is looking to get into a hardware wallet, and that is to be able to actually have a multi-cosigner wallet, or what they call multi-sig. So this allows multiple individuals to authorize and sign off on transactions prior to them occurring. This has also an advantage in terms of recovery, where in order to rebuild the entirety of the wallet from the seed, you can actually also split it up between various areas and then store those parts to the keys separately, to make it harder for anybody who is looking to get that information to take it. So it increases security not only from a transactional standpoint, in my opinion, but it also increases security in terms of being able to actually recover it later on down the line in a particular fashion. I think that multi-sig really is, again, the biggest thing that I could say for anybody looking to a hardware wallet. You know, if you have a family, that's one structure that you can set up where you have two parents that are requiring control, you know, over the sending of funds by any other individual. This requires mutual agreement between the parties to transact, which is very nice. And then in terms of actually storing the keys themselves, again, multiple parties know where these things are located, and then they can bring them together to recover the funds should something happen. But it would be very difficult for an actor who gets hold of one individual in particular to be able to, again, ascertain that same amount of wealth. With all of this said, hardware wallets, as well as also mobile wallets, which are called light wallets, do exist, and there are different variations of it. Yuri, are there any particular ones that you like or that you think are really interesting in terms of those categories?
Well, I think hardware wallets are definitely the first choice that I would recommend to people. And the reason is for that is because they are quite easy to use. Normally, they just have a couple of buttons like confirm or cancel, or with multiple different actions. And they most of them have the little display that allows you to confirm transactions independently and verify transaction details both on your computer screen and on the screen of your device. The thing with the hardware devices is that it's essentially a single-purpose computer that was designed specifically for Bitcoin transactions and Bitcoin private key storage. Because before, what people did is they used old laptops that were completely either air-gapped or at least separated and from their main network or disconnected from the internet. So people would sign transactions on those offline computers and then save transactions on a USB drive or an SD card, and then transfer this transaction as a file onto the online computer and broadcast it on the online computer. And of course, it was a bit of a pain. So hardware manufacturers saw a great opportunity there for the market and decided to create a single purpose computer that actually fits in your pocket. And this is how these as Obama said, Swiss bank accounts in your pockets were born. The Trezor, the company behind Trezor, Satoshi Labs, actually pioneered this field. And after that, competition appeared. Trezor is still I think, in the leading positions out there. I still use it. And a lot of them have had the vulnerabilities before. They have been all disclosed and fixed. But there are good competitors out there. And if you're really a hardcore Bitcoiner, or at least a little more interested in technology and more interested in advanced features, and also don't want your hardware wallet software and firmware to be polluted with the support of other coins that don't really matter to you, you may also choose Cold Card, which is a wallet produced by the Canadian company CoinKite. I think this is a very, very good wallet. And the best thing about this wallet is that it can be powered on completely separately from computer. And what you can do with it is sign so-called PSBT, which stands for a partially signed Bitcoin transaction. So essentially, you can sign it in a completely isolated environment, and then, just like I explained before, with a separate computer, you use a SD card and transfer that PSBT into the online computer to broadcast it. Yes, it's probably a little more hassle and more steps for you to undertake, but as they say, the paranoid survive. And you would really, I think you would love the process if you only learned to use that. But again, I definitely understand that not a lot of people want to indulge in this deeper knowledge of Bitcoin. They just want literally to buy, to send and receive. That's what they want. Another thing that I think that's interesting to mention is that a lot of the, in the United States, for example, banks themselves were just given green light to custody Bitcoin for people. which is in addition to other custodial services that already exist, like Coinbase, for example. And this is an interesting development, but of course, as we talked about before, we do recommend that you store your Bitcoins in your own wallets and having your own keys. The Bitcoin saying goes, not your keys, not your Bitcoins. So, but we do see a subset of population, especially maybe older population or population that comes from traditional finance, who are really used to trusting third parties, trusting big names out there. So they would rather go with a Fidelity than buying an $80 device like Trezor and doing it all themselves. Well, I mean, you know, it's up to them. I would personally recommend to use self-storage, and we will see how this thing develops, because what do you think will happen? For example, Nick, when you think about future maybe attempts by, let's say, governmental agencies to affect Bitcoin in some way, I think the first thing that they will go after would be storage, right? So how do you think this will develop, and what do you think will be the do you think any developments such as this will affect people's choices in terms of storage?
That's a very great question, and I think there's a lot of implications for that. Where I'm noticing a pattern, and I will lead to answering your question right afterwards, is generally what I'm noticing from our conversation as well as from my experience in the space is that the type of security, effort, and energy you put into the storage of your Bitcoin really depends on how much value you place on that Bitcoin personally, as well as how much value, of course, monetarily they represent. So people that might not necessarily have too much care for the future of Bitcoin or hold too much Bitcoin, are just experimenting with it, they would be very quick to adopt lower friction technologies such as light wallets, mobile wallets, and things of that nature. As well as kind of in that same realm, I think individuals who, as you said, are used to third parties helping secure services or helping secure their funds through custodial services. So as you move into the spectrum of having more value to secure and having more care personally for those funds, you start to drift into hardware wallets, you start to drift into being able to control transactional capabilities, basically all of the elements that you think a normal bank would do for you, you start to adopt personally and put in those controls over your assets, in this case particularly being Bitcoin. And I think this spectrum, because of the value that people place, is individualistic, right? It depends, kind of as we said at the very beginning of this conversation, as to your risk tolerance for losing the Bitcoin, because that's really how you derive value. If this trend continues, I think that more and more people will really start to, well, think twice about how they're securing their Bitcoin and how they're transacting with it, aka they will start to awaken to the value of it. And similarly, as you mentioned, governments will also come into contact with the value of Bitcoin and its growth and its adoption. So one of the things predominantly that could happen is custodial services, mobile wallets, things that are controlled by third parties can easily be affected by large pressures from a socioeconomic perspective, as well as, of course, as you mentioned, from a government one as well. So to put it bluntly, people that give away their right of storage and their right of control over their funds will be the first ones targeted, in my opinion, by various legislation, as well as various pushes for a cashless society by not only the banking system, but as well as also the governments of the various countries in which they live. So to that extent, I believe it's incredibly important for people to retain and think about how they can retain control over their funds, whether it be with a hardware wallet, whether it be with a Trezor, whether it be with a cold card, depending on your level of technical understanding, as well as your value of the funds that you hold under your control. is going to dictate which way you move into, but more and more the pressures are going to push, I think, a lot of individuals towards the spectrum of increased security and increased storage. So that's personally my thoughts. How quickly will this happen? That's yet to be seen. I think it's going to develop differently in different countries at different paces, and all you can do is be prepared. And that's kind of exactly what you were speaking to as well, Yuri, when you spoke about paranoid people survive, and these times certainly do call, I think, for a little bit of paranoia. But with that being said, the transition, I think, will be gradual nonetheless. It's not going to be a gigantic rift of legislation that's going to come in all at once. It's going to be a slow, gradual acquiescence of different parties from the corporate sense as well as from the government side and the citizenry itself. So the biggest thing, in my opinion, is to stay aware of the issues that are currently going on and make sure that you are prepared for them. So to finish off, Yuri, I think, could you leave the audience perhaps with what you see as the best solution in terms of being able to transact and store Bitcoin today? If you had to pick one device that most everybody could use and adopt and quickly become controllers of their own wealth, what would you suggest?
Yeah, well, I won't get any referral commission for that, but definitely get a Trezor. It's super easy to use, very easy to install. The instructions are there, and it's the most popular device, I think. Just use a Trezor, and you'll be fine. But we'll definitely keep our eyes on future developments, and if there's more easily accessible and easy to use wallets that are on the market, will definitely let you know.
Thanks for that. Well, you guys heard it here first. And Trezor, if you guys are listening, hit us up. No, I'm just kidding. And with that, my name is Nick, signing off.
And I'm Yuri. Thanks for tuning in. Check out moontower.co.